Hello, everyone. So, kind of on a whim today, I decided that I wanted to implement a new feature for for little a. I want to implement if expressions. We'll probably get through just the parsing part initially. Uh, the back end may be a bit more difficult and tricky, and that may be a bit more thinking to do and a bit more reading on my part. However, I would like to show how to contribute at least a basic syntactic feature. So when we switched over to the new compiler, to the new parser, when I switched over to the new parser, I added a test for it. I started practicing test-driven development. So so once we get down far enough, we will see let statements and so on. But we want to parse expressions. So I think between binary expressions and if statements should be good enough for parsing. So we will say the parser will parse if expressions. And so to do that, we say that if x, then y, else z plus 1. And so we shall parse expressions. We shall check that the statement at the top will be null. And then we will also need to say this should be the expression. There's a few typos in here. But we should also say that the if expression is a dynamic cast is a dynamic cast to a new class we'll have to create, the AST if expression pointer coming from the expression. Then we will have to check that the if expression that we just retrieved is not null. And we will need to also say that we should get this. Now we'll notice that there is no if expression. That is correct. We need to go into our source folder, into the AST folder, and we'll now need to open up here. Now, because currently there are only 4 kinds of expressions we handle. User-provided expressions, so this is things like identifiers and integers. Unary expressions, which are things like the Boolean not or negation. The binary expression, which is things like multiplication, division, comparisons, and function calls. So I think what I'll do is I'll put the class for if expressions here, and it will be some sort of expression, of course. And now, of course, we get to say that we realize that this is an abstract class because we need to implement a few important features like making it visitable. And also, we need to say that we are movable but not copyable. As we are as we are in a dependency hierarchy, in a class hierarchy. So now we just make sure that those say if expression. And now to create one of these expressions, we will need to take in an if expression will always take in an expression pointer for its condition, an expression pointer that is its then case, and an expression pointer for its else case. And now all of these are unused, but we will add those 3 here. So we can just say that these are expression pointers to the condition, then case, and the else case. Now all we have to do is we have to initialize them. So the condition comes from the condition. And we will also say in the same way that the then case comes from the then case that was passed in. And finally, here we can just say that the then can be replaced with an else in all cases. And that's it. As you'll notice, we've solved the compilation errors for the test. However, now we need to work on the parsing of it. So to do that, we will open up the new parser. Now, since we're parsing expressions, we need to find where we parse expressions. We can find that there is a function here that parses an expression. You'll notice that here starts the chain of precedence. First is Boolean expressions, then is comparison expressions, and so on. Now, we want if expressions to be at the highest level. That is, all expressions can be all types of expressions are naturally contained within a if expression, which means that it needs to be here at parse expression. For now, there are two options here. Either we put this in parse expression, or we create a helper that does it. We probably will want to create a helper, so we can just parse if expression. And then we will have to open up the new parser file, the new parser. And here, what we will do for the new parser is we will create another expression, which will be parse if expression. So as you see, that error solved itself. So now we need to parse the if expression. So when we parse the if expression, what is it? Well, we will write that out. So an if expression looks something like if expr, then expr, else expr. Effectively, that an if expression is an if followed by an expression, followed by a then, followed by an else, followed by an expression. However, what if there is no if? So we have to check if we consume if we consume if for an if, which would for a singular if, which is a token type if underscore, if I remember correctly. Yes, it is. So if there is a value here, that means there is an if. But if there's not a value, we can simply return the normal expression that we have, which would be going down the the tree of expressions. So that would be going down into the Boolean expression. So now we know here that we did consume an if. We did consume an if. Well, since we consumed an if, that means we get to do the condition. And the condition will be a whole expression. We will consume another whole expression here. So we will say that we want the condition to be parse of an expression. And the reason we say it's a parse of an expression is because we may want some case where there's an if inside of an if. It's very unlikely that somebody will want that, but we're more about what we're permitting than what we require. So now that we have the condition, we will check that the next token we consume is a then token. Now you'll notice that we don't have a then token, so we have to add a then in here. And I will paste this down and we'll use this for else. But here we need to get the then branch, which is the same parse expression. And now we can also parse the else branch. The reason we need this is say that somebody wants to write else ifs as a form of an expression. And then finally, once we are done with parsing all of that, we can say that we will return make unique a new unique pointer that will contain an AST if expression with the move of the condition move of the condition, move of the then branch, and move of the else branch. Now you'll notice that we added the then token. So we need to go back and add a test for it. And we need to say that there is a then token. Now there is already a place where we parse an if. There should be already a place where we parse an if. Parser will parse if. So we should update this test to parse then, because these three words are all used in the same context. Then. Okay. And now we add one more token at the end here, a then. And now we get to build the program. As you can see, no compilation errors. And now we get to run the test program, and we'll see that there are errors, as expected. So the first error we'll notice is that the then token isn't parsed correctly, because it's not of the correct token type. So to handle that, we go back to the parser, and this is parsing tokens. So we ask for the next token. Where do we parse the next token? We parse it down here. Now you'll notice that then starts with a T, which is alphabetic, so we need to check next identifier. So here in the next identifier, you'll notice that we have a mapping from certain words to certain token types. And we will throw the then case in here. And now I will sort these to be sure that they're alphabetically ordered for niceness, for neatness, and then we will build the program again. Okay. And then we get to do the same test again. As you notice, everything passed, which means that this is a nice feature I can add in. So I can add that, and I can start closing up, and I can say that we have a nice change to that. In fact, we can see how many lines we changed. And let's read over our changes. So we added the expr class, the if expression. We added new parsing for the if expression. We added the then token. We added tests for the then token. In fact, we'll notice that there's an issue in the new parser that needs to be formatted correctly. There's some editor thing that I will update later. So we need to update the parser header here. We will notice that that is updated, so we will add it, add this file, and then we can also run that from here. So we'll notice that we have that, we have that, and we have that. It's nice. And we notice that we've updated the test, added one more token check, parsed an if expression, and then it casted correctly. So I think this test is enough. I will now write a commit, and we will say added then token and if expression parsing. Only 55 insertions. And we shall do a bit of a push. And thank you for joining me along this little implementation.